So Kyron, it's time for your adventure into test.
Thank you, Nate. Cross our fingers. Everything would go well. Okay, so assuming all of your data has been posted in CalPads with no errors, all of the records passed and posted, the next phase in your submission process is, of course, your certification process. So this is just the certification workflow. As you can see, NAVIR 1 only requires one approval. Okay, NAVIR 2 and NAVIR 1 are the only NAVIR submission that do not require a SELPA approval. So that's good news for you guys because you have full control when you will be able to certify. And on the other hand, that's also something that you guys have to look out for because you have full responsibility if you don't certify on time. And so this is just a the workflow. I don't want to discuss in detail, but you got the point. You have to submit, correct certification errors, review reports, and then approve. Okay. And here are your certification errors that you may or may not encounter. So the ones in red, of course, are the fatals. This would prevent you from certifying. There are some warnings that you might encounter, like the CERT 99s that we have been telling you guys. So if in your end of year certification, you see end of year 1 as part of the submission that you need to certify, and you only have grade 7 and 8, and you opt not to report data, you still have to certify with 0 counts. You will see a lot of CERT 99s because obviously you haven't submitted your SCSC records or CRSC because it's optional for 7 and 8 graders. You can ignore those warnings and certify. And for those LEAs who have a combination of both, like 7, 8, and 8 graders and 9 to 12 grade students, if you see students who are in grade 7 and 8 getting CERT 99s and you decided not to submit courses for them, or if they are actually in self-contained courses and you are still getting CERT 99s, you can ignore those warnings. Okay, so let's go into our demo here. Of course, when you certify, you go to certification status. Again, you need to have the specific role to even access this. You need to have the data certifier role. And once you get in there, you need to have the reports role for NAVIR 1 to be able to look at reports. So let's click on NAVIR 1 and we go into the certification details. Okay, so here is a summary of your most recent snapshot. There are times when you opt to have multiple snapshots. Let's say you've already certified and you froze your data for that version and you're waiting for a new snapshot to reflect corrections that you've made. Chances are you will have multiple revisions here. Okay, so when you're LA approved or in review uncertified, you froze a certain version of the snapshot and you want to see any changes you've made, just switch this status and look for the revised and certified and make sure that the revision create date is later than when you made the changes, and hopefully those changes would have reflected on that version. So there is a YouTube video for that, for the process. So click on this under intro and basics. You have your snapshot revision. There's two versions of it, the long one, which discusses the entire certification process, and also the short one, which discusses the effects of toggling between those options. Okay. Okay. So below that are your certification validations. Okay. So if you have fatal errors, chances are you will see those errors here. So for those eagle-eyed LAs, what is new in this section? What seems odd, at least in this certification error summary? That's right, Faiza. We have CRSC 123. In prior years, certification errors would only have a prefix of cert because obviously these are cert errors. However, after post redesign, there will be what we call certification data discrepancy that would also potentially trigger for your LEAs. Okay, just to explain what this is, essentially, in our intention of making the process faster for you guys to post records in CalPads, we've limited the number of IVRs triggering during upload. Just because all of your data have been posted with no errors during upload, that doesn't mean you're clear. There is now another set of validations we call data discrepancies that would occur either here, and if you don't correct those, it will just fester on and appear every submission that where it might be relevant at. So it is important to address those data discrepancies. That way it won't prevent you from certifying. Okay, so that's just a quick summary of this. There will be a video created or maybe a live training to explain this process once the functionality is open up to all of you LAs. And then if you have zero errors and you're poised to certify end of year one, because all of your data are there in CalPads, just set an expectation that there might be potential additional errors that you will need to resolve that are certification data discrepancies. This functionality will be activated, I believe, next week. And so just giving you a heads up on this change. And this is also the reason why CalPads isn't allowing you to certify right now, because we're trying to implement this system. And in anticipation of you getting additional errors, that's the reason why we prevented you from certifying at this time. Okay, and then below that are your certification reports that you need to review. Nate will discuss this later, and snapshot history. Okay, so let's address how to resolve errors. Okay, here are some of your errors. If you click on this button, it should link you to the CalPads user manual where it provides you the description of the errors. This is essentially your error list, the same data that or explanation that you will see if you download the CalPads error list. But we encourage you to use this in that way you would be able to see the error right away, and there will be additional maybe videos added in at the bottom that would help you be able to explain how to troubleshoot it. Okay, so let's look at cert 54. If I click on this, I see that 9 are triggering the error. Essentially, it's stating that staff demographics is missing. A course section includes a seed for which there is no demographic information. So this then leads us to that slide where we had earlier with regards to relationships. So if you submitted a course and use a valid seed number, then we expect you to have a staff demographic record for that seed reflecting that that staff is employed at your district. Okay, so if you get a cert 54, make sure that you have the demographic record in CalPads. Okay, sometimes it could just be a timing issue. You submitted the course ahead of the staff record SDM, and so you just have to wait until the snapshot can catch up and also include your SDM records that you have posted. Okay, another one, which is one of those notorious ones, is CERT 123, missing or invalid SCSC record for CTE completer. So we click on this. It brings up CERT 123. It's stating that no student course section or SCSC was submitted for a CTE capstone course at the same reporting LEA or associated state course code submitted is not valid for SCTE pathway. Long story short, it's just stating that, hey, you're claiming that this student is a CTE pathway completer for this particular pathway, but we don't see an SCSC record matching the CTE capstone reported for this current academic year wherein you are reporting the CTE pathway code. Okay, So let's look at that error. I have one here. I scroll down and it is causing an error for this student. So we click on this, it brings this up. So we have student Joe Rizal. We claim that this student is a CTE pathway completer for 102 and 100. Okay. So now what's our next step? We have to make sure that the student course lists the capstone course for that specific pathway. So what document do we use again in resolving these errors? Our handy dandy notebook. Just kidding. The valid code combinations document. Thank you, Colleen. So let's look at 102, right? So 102, again, how did we end up getting here? We filter for the specific state course codes. So first, go to course group master combos, filter for just those that is currently active, valid codes, and then filter for the pathway. 102 states that the capstone course is 7132 or 7135. So I assume that's what we should see for this student, 132 or 135. Unfortunately, I don't see that here. Okay, so that then tells you that you didn't report the course code of that student in this current academic year, so you forgot. So here are some questions you would ask. When did the student complete the capstone course? Or is the student even in that pathway, right? So those are two questions you have to ask. If the student isn't in this pathway, then by all means, do not report 102. You can go ahead and open this record and delete it. Now, if the student is in this pathway, but for some reason you did not report the course, then by all means resubmit your SCSC file. Now, if that student actually had her capstone last year, and since you're trying to claim that the student completed the pathway this year because maybe they took the course out of sequence, as I've mentioned earlier, you have the option to report both the concentrator course, 7131, and 7132. Okay? So I guess what we have here is just 7131, which is the concentrator course. So you have the option to report both this year. That way, you can claim the student as a completer. Okay? So we also have CT pathway code 100. So again, we go to our valid code combos document, filter for code 100, and code 100 states that the student should have 7112, right? 7112. And so we go back here and there is no 7112 here. Again, you have to ask yourself a question. Is the student actually in this pathway? Or you may have mistakenly reported this SCTE record for the student. Okay. Second, maybe it's just a timing issue again. You haven't submitted the SCSE record that matches this pathway. So these are the things you have to account for when troubleshooting CERT 123. Believe me, if you have CT pathways, this error will trigger for you, and this is the process on how to report them. Also CRSE 123. If you click on this, it brings you to this section. Notice that for file types that are included as CDDs, you will have this additional section here. Okay. So does it say data discrepancy? If it has an X, that means more often than not, it will be part of the data discrepancy section and also the CDD. How do you address CDDs that are reflected on the CERT? I would suggest you address the CDDs first because once you address those, once you resolve these CDDs, chances are it would also potentially resolve any cert errors that you might also be triggering. Okay. So once you've resolved the errors, you wait for a new snapshot to trigger. And then once the snapshot reflects, 0 errors here, and also a new certification create date, revised create date, then that's when you look at reports. You shouldn't even be looking at reports if you have errors listed on your revised and certified version. Okay. So with that, once all of your data are corrected, you've resolved your CDDs, your cert errors, then that's when you look at your reports. When you review your reports, you should have a box here that you could check, and then the LAA approve button will appear in here. Okay. But then, of course, that has been deactivated for now. And with that, I'm passing on to Nate